Gutchen. I'm your Vice President of the Resident Council and representing all of Baldwin Park. And we got a historic occasion here. After almost 4 years, we got all 6 buildings that Baldwin Park built, and we now exist as a complete facility here. We've got our neighborhood representatives for each of the buildings, so you know who to go to with all your and we got our new gathering place, if you will, which holds an awful lot more people. We can do an awful lot more things in than the small amenities building. We've had the AB building for a while, and hopefully in a couple of months we're even going to have a restaurant or two here. So we are definitely making progress. Yeah. So welcome to the whole show, and we got some tweaks going on, some things to do, both people-wise, us getting organized and such, and a few fixes here and there. And I'm not even going to ask Joey where the chairs went, but this is Joey's show, so welcome to our grand opening of the Amenities CD. Joey, thank you very much.
And we do have more seats up front, so don't be shy. Make yourselves comfortable. I have a 2-hour presentation. No, I understand that I'm standing between you and some drinks and some charcuterie and some live music, so I'm going to try and keep this moving along. So last time I spoke a little bit about our Baldwin Park team. Do want to continue to hit that every time as we have changes. So Cherry Hooven over in reception, myself over in the AB admin building, Chris Bowles, our maintenance supervisor, is there as well. Yep. Jose Vasquez, our director of housekeeping. We are still looking for the housekeeping supervisor who you will most likely interact with, as they'll be in charge of a lot of the cleaning schedules for independent living, as well as taking care of the common areas outside of the nursing center and outside of assisted living. Hernan, Chef Hernan, many of you know, yep, absolutely. He is our executive chef. I put that asterisk there because we are still looking for a food and beverage director. As I mentioned last time, we'll no longer have an assistant director reporting to Winter Park. It'll be a freestanding director responsible solely for the Highlands Market, as well as the food service and the nursing center. Yes, very good. Josh Thomas, I may have pulled the trigger early on his starting over here, but for good reason. He has hired an assistant business office manager. She will be starting, I believe, in the next week or two. He's going to finish her onboarding and training. She'll be housed out of the Winter Park campus along with Nicole Mitchell, our other business office manager. Once he's completed that orientation, then he's going to be over here full-time instead of in and out a lot. So realistically, we're looking at an August start date, probably 2 to 3 more weeks before he's here full-time. But obviously he is available, as is Nicole, to answer your questions in regards to any billing or insurance-related issues. We also have an open lifestyles position, which Kayla is diligently working on. You'll see our new director of volunteers started, Amber. She was floating around here just a minute ago. So we are getting some more folks in that department, bringing on some new bus drivers, which is allowing us to resume a lot of the weekend shuttle services to the various churches. So we're happy to bring that back. That'll also help us to bring back the shuttle in between campuses, as well as later on in the evening when we have special functions, special events that you are trying to get to off campus. Wellness, we do have an open position there. Jason is extending an offer to a candidate today, so I'm hoping to be able to introduce her very shortly. Extensive working experience with Lauren, actually over at the Crosby Wellness Center, so we're poaching from nearby, but we're happy to do so to bring you some additional programming, expand the offerings and the number of classes, because I know some of the classes are starting to get pretty tight, so we're looking forward to giving you some more flexible options to attend to. So that's our Baldwin Park team. This is a slide that I was happy to get rid of a month ago and not so happy to have to bring back now, but do want to speak a little bit about COVID-19 and as it relates to our community. So Orange County's positivity rate in the last 14 days, the rolling 14 days, is well over 11%. I actually think that may have gone up even higher. To give you a little bit of perspective, probably 3-4 weeks back, we were looking at a positivity rate 2 to 3%. So in 14 days, that has gone up quite significantly. To give you an idea of the state's level of concern, 0 to 5%, they categorize as green, 5 to 10 is yellow, and anything above 10% gets into red. Typically, those colors are associated with a certain level of restrictions or measures being reinstituted from the Department of Health perspective. We use those color coding as well for our own efforts, and some of that, with us being over 10%, we are reinstituting some precautions specific to the nursing center and to assisted living, specifically with use of PPE by our team members and also requested of guests and visitors to those areas. Staff are back in N95 masks all the time. They'll be using disposable gowns, a lot of disposable PPE. The good thing is, with a lot of the supply chain issues being addressed for PPE, personal protective equipment, excuse me, we no longer have to use some of the unconventional strategies we were using in the past to conserve. We're back to a more conventional strategy, which is essentially a lot of single use. Put a gown on every single time you deal with a specific resident and trash it. The N95 masks, it's a much shorter. Before it was use it until it's frayed. Now it's essentially no more than 3 days. Obviously it's frayed, soiled, switch it out. So we are able to be a little bit more aggressive with our use of PPE, knowing we have a much more secure supply line on that. We've gone to testing non-vaccinated team members twice a week. So to give you a little bit of sense, that's driven by the Department of Health as well as the Agency for Healthcare Administration. But if you're in that 0 to 5 in that green territory, you're essentially testing once a month. If you are in the yellow, you're testing once a week. And if you're in the red zone, you're testing twice a week. So obviously Orange County's over 10, we're into twice a week. If someone tests positive, a resident or a team member, then in the nursing center, regardless of your vaccination status, everybody tests twice a week until you go 14 days without a positive test. So that's why for our team members, there's a lot of communication. Who's testing, when you're testing, how often you're testing. It's an awful thing to have to manage, but it's very, very important. So it's something we work with our team members on quite a bit. It would help us tremendously if our team members would continue to accept vaccination. I did share with you, Winter Park team members, 58% are vaccinated, Baldwin Park, 78% are vaccinated. It's encouraging with our Baldwin Park team, their levels being kind of above that 70-75% threshold, which we're targeting for. And that goes back to that kind of herd immunity goal that you're trying to get to. But realistically, we want to continue to drive that. Winter Park, we have obviously opportunity to continue to improve upon that. There are some steps that we're continuing to look at. One of them is actually in the finalization process in terms of our policy, but essentially effective August, we're only going to hire team members that are either vaccinated or are willing to get that first dose prior to employment so that they can. It's very necessary. Tom and I support it 100%. There's always a little but. We're in a very tight labor market. It may make things a little worse for us on the short term in terms of filling some certain positions, but we think that is a pain to accept considering the alternative, which is obviously the risk of infection to the team member, the residents, and especially our most vulnerable in the nursing center. So that means we are continuing to study whether or not we can mandate or when we will mandate vaccination for existing team members. Some of that, I think, delay or hesitancy does circulate around the vaccines being authorized by the FDA under the emergency use authorization, essentially kind of a temporary quick start authorization. Pfizer has gone for their approval for 16 and up, for their, I guess, more permanent approval. With that approval, we would be able to institute a policy like we do with flu vaccine. Flu vaccination is mandatory for our team members. There is 2 exceptions: a religious exception, where a certified clergy person has to sign off that it is indeed a religious exception, and then also medical, where a physician has to sign off that that team member cannot have that vaccine. So we do have a framework in place with the flu vaccine requirement, and we would probably use a very similar structure to that for the COVID-19 vaccine. Once, as an organization, we'll feel comfortable moving forward with that kind of a mandate. So currently there is no mandate, but that is something we are continuing to study. Vaccines are available to all you, family members, friends, somebody you run into on the street, our team members, their families. We use Westminster Senior Care Pharmacy. They come on site once a week. It's usually Tuesdays. Next week it's going to be Wednesday. To be able to they use the Moderna vaccine, a 2-step vaccine. They're here every week, so they can get you on the 4th week for your 2nd dose. So we are continuing to push that. Questions about COVID-19 in our community? Okay. General updates. Amenities CD, so we're here, we're sitting in it. AV system, we have some work to do, as you can see by the cord hanging from the middle of the room. And kind of not the AV system's fault. They went to plug everything in and there was no outlet in the ceiling, so we had to have Clancy come back out and put an outlet, so they got that, but they couldn't get it fine-tuned, so a little cockeyed and a little wire hanging down, but we'll improve. But it's better than looking at that tiny screen over there, I think. We do have furniture, fittings, equipment to complete in this space, especially in the pantry area, coffee maker out front, bringing the TVs online with my favorite Spectrum and cable boxes. So we're still continuing to work on that. I think it'll be another couple weeks before we're completely shipshape in that front. Seating and room setups, my favorite topic right now. These lovely chairs that you're sitting in turned out to be a lot wider than I think any of us were expecting. So we have literally squirreled away chairs that are in excess at this point all throughout this building. There's a prize for finding one. Actually, I hope nothing happens to Jose, because he's the only one who knows where they all are. So I half expected to find one in the restroom, but he did not go that far. But we are, I can't return them. Someone was like, just return them and buy new ones. I can't return them. Custom made, custom fabrics, all that fun stuff. I can't return them. I am trying every kind of channel available to me to see. We've got a lot of projects coming up, both at Baldwin Park and at Winter Park especially, where seating will be needed. I've floated up that, hey, we would like to maybe mix and match some chairs, get some smaller ones, maybe some armless ones. And the design team and the construction teams heard me. They've confirmed in writing to me that they're going to see what they can do to help me out with maybe getting some seating that's a little bit more flexible for our needs. We have worked with the vendor. We've selected some carts to help us store them. Hopefully we can stack them a little higher than 5 high, which is kind of what we were running into with the original carts, and that'll help us with the storage. Why this matters to you is kind of how hard or easy it is for us to change rooms over and how quickly to meet your programming needs. I know you want to get in this space and use it. I do want to be cognizant of my housekeeping team and their regular duties that they need to be taken care of, as well as, kind of the stop, drop, flip a room, take all the chairs out. So there are, I'm really kind of requesting we stick to more auditorium style events for the next few weeks until those carts come in and I can more easily move chairs and tables in and out. We really do want to get to a point where we can meet whatever kind of room setup needs that you have. but we want to make sure that we are doing that successfully, making sure that it's set up in time for you to do decorations or whatnot. We don't want to be scrambling last minute and making you sweat too. So that's a little bit about amenities CD. Access control upgrades. So this is for our phase 1 residents, the little fobs you use to get in and out of the elevators and stairwells and trash rooms and things like that. We're moving ahead with that conversion. There were some gentlemen here doing wire pulls last week. You may have seen them popping ceiling tiles here and there, working through the hallways. They're pretty much, their work is completed. Next Tuesday, we're going to be starting the actual conversion of the control units at the elevators, the control units on the doors, and swapping those out. I don't think they're starting on Tuesday. I think they're just doing the final site visit Tuesday, and then most likely Wednesday they're going to start their work. I will send out a separate memo to the buildings impacted if there is some adverse impact to you, but the access control system will be up and running the entire time. There just may be the scenario when you left in the morning, you used your old fob, and when you came back in the afternoon, you used your point of sale fob to get back in. So there just might be that, but I will share that with you via memo once I know a little bit more what building they're starting on and how quickly they're working. But we're looking at about a week's worth of work for them to do to complete that process. Spectrum. Yeah, next slide, right? Spectrum, we're continuing to work on billing issues. They continue to throw curveballs at us. I had one resident email me, they have a new bill for $49.99 now. I had another resident email that have an increase of 2 cents. So those, it's my favorite. We're continuing to work to try and get those addressed. But ultimately, kind of my goal is for this fall, our new service agreement will hopefully kind of press the reset button with Spectrum to hopefully get everybody back on the correct plans with the correct billing without you having to scrutinize your bill every single month. New business systems, I did mention our transition to point-click care. It's mostly for nursing center and assisted living because it's the medical record software we use, but it's also the billing system we use, which impacts you and the statements that you receive. Our team is ecstatic to be going to point-click care. It is a major software system used throughout the entire country. Very up-to-date, very cutting edge. We're borderline like stone tablets right now, so we're super excited about the move. Our team will be trained in August, and we're going live in September. It starts really with the nursing center, and then it'll roll out to AL and to independent living. I don't know yet what, if any, impact it'll have on you. My guess is that paper statement that you receive is probably the first thing that's going to change. But Josh and I have already talked about, once we know what it's going to look like, kind of doing a side-by-side. Here's what you're getting now, here's what you're going to get, here's where you look for information. If we need to do a meeting like we did with the universal credit plan changes, we'll look to do something like that, record it for those who can't be in attendance. But I don't know too much in concrete detail, so I don't want to get you too wound up about it. But just want to give you a heads up that it is coming. Any questions about those items on the slide? Okay. General update, signage. We had a whole bunch of little signs we were putting up, stop signs, no parking signs. A lot of that has been done, but a couple new ones popped up from building and grounds meeting. An additional stop sign here at the CD intersection to stop traffic from C heading out towards the west entrance. So we'll have that on order, and then also one by E and F, really in front of Highlands, kind of heading towards the nursing center, a stop sign there. So we'll get those ordered with fast signs and get that added. Many of you in the, well, it's especially applicable to phase 2, but our CO is pending the completion of this project distributed antenna systems. This is for first responders, the radio system that's now required to facilitate communications downtown to their headquarters. The work has been done. We do need to have it inspected and tested. Tested may impact certain residents because what they do is they walk around with essentially a piece of testing equipment go into rooms, go into units, and test what it's like for a radio signal to travel out, measure the strength, and make sure that it is within their parameters before they're going to give us an approval on that system. That's the last thing that's holding us up from a permanent CO. So as soon as we have that tested, in all likelihood with that kind of testing, there might be having to move, a module or something from one end of the hall to another, or adding something. So realistically, it's not like a one inspection and you're done. It's probably a little bit of back and forth to make sure that the frequencies are within range of the fire department's liking. We do have parking painting that'll occur once we have the CO. Specifically, that impacts C building. I've talked to a couple folks about what that looks like. And for kind of like a high level, somehow I lost a parking spot during the painting and I want it back. And I know that impacted some folks because they made selections based off of the original design, and that's what did not get painted. So we are going to return that so I can get my parking spot back, and so folks get the spots that they originally signed up for, because I know you looked at posts and walkways and all of that, so we're going to try and get that squared away. And when we do that, we're going to put some special paint in the electric charging spots so that it's more identifiable as a electric car charging area. And then I've got some paint correction to do with some old crosswalks that lead you to nowhere. I need to black those out. So trying to get that all done in one shot. I just leave this up here, the sidewalk between D and E, connecting the parking lot to the pond. That is still on our radar. That we will not proceed until the CO. That's a permanent project. We don't want to slow anything down with the current open permits on phase 2. So once we're done with that, we'll be moving forward. Had some requests for looking at the pet waste stations, not conveniently located or too far out in the grass, making people walk in lumpy areas. Chris and I took a look at it. Some of them are a little faded, some are a little bent, so we're kind of looking at what options we have to maybe make a more professional appearance and more convenient locations. And then my intent is, we have our community map. It's just to put a little green dot for the pet waste station so we can share that with you, and hey, if I'm out on a walk, here are the different pet waste stations that I could hit up for a baggie or something. And projects and development, we continue to work on community garden, poolside shade, and library shelving. Right now, library shelving's moving ahead pretty well in that I've got a design for the space. We're looking at AB Amenity Center. There's a little computer room. You all have tablets and cell phones and laptops. I don't know that I see anybody in there. So we're going to take out the 4 stations, leave 1, and turn it into a more formal library. Right now, we've got some temporary bookshelves, so we're going to do a nice built-in unit there to kind of make it a little bit more inviting. But all these 3 projects will all go through kind of the resident council representation to make sure we're all hunky-dory with everything. But those are just little things that we're continuing to work on in the background. Today, Tom, Andy, Ansi, myself, Mickey Sullivan, the chair of Building and Ground, sat in on presentations from landscape contractors, 2 of them that we identified as kind of the finalists. We are, about a couple of months ago, we made the decision to move away from our current landscape vendor, Trimac. So we kind of honed in. There were, I think, 10 that started, 6 that bid, 4 that were solid, 2 that kind of made it to the final round. And we've made our selection, but I won't quite announce that just yet. Realistically, we have a 30-day out, so August will be that period, and most likely we're looking at September, maybe the end of August as a start for the new organization. Just to give you kind of a sense, and it's very different between Baldwin Park and Winter Park. Winter Park being, from a landscape perspective, much more mature landscaping. It's a very kind of almost 2 different programs, and we're really tackling it in that sense. But it's a 12-month contract, but we're realistically looking at like a 2 to 3 year program to get ourselves back to where we want to be in terms of being a premier destination community from a landscape perspective. And the reason why I say it's that long is you're talking about mature trees that need to be trimmed under the care of an arborist. You're talking about fertilization that needs to be done in an environmentally responsible manner. You're talking about irrigation systems that need to be brought back up to par with the appropriate sensors and equipment to know when it's raining and it's not raining. So obviously that's not something we can just bite off in one single go. That's something we're going to have to work, very methodically. But the vendor we've selected, strong local ties, lots of local community sites that are really top notch. So I think once it's published, many of you connected with the community will know them, and I think we're headed in the right direction there. On the housekeeping front, Jose has been working diligently. There was a wait list for phase 2 residents wanting the housekeeping services. He's going to be reaching out to you to start setting you up with appointments. I think that's August, is that correct? Yes, in August, so we'll get you up and running. So we're happy to be able to continue meeting that need. We've hired one of the 2 custodians we've designated for the exterior maintenance of the A through F buildings, as well as the amenity centers and the fitness areas. Actually, I did not include this here, but I did just want to put a plug in. One of our team members, Bill Cross, passed very suddenly. I know that memo didn't get out quite as we intended, so I do apologize for that. Some of you may not have known him too well, but he did work over in the nursing center, but he also did care for a lot of the elevator and lobbies and things like that here. So we were able to attend his service, and our thoughts and prayers with his wife, who was a former team member here, so we knew her well as well. Pest control. Last time we were in the middle of Ehrlich putting in a termite program here. All of those bait stations have been put in. The monitoring is ongoing. Really, this is just kind of a proactive step, not necessarily anything reactive or in response to anything, but we recognize the need that it wasn't here, so we got those stations in. A and F, B activity, yes. I was gonna have a little joke, but I was like, all right. So you'll notice A building and F building have some good sized holes in them. We identified, I think it started with F building, when there was honey running down the side of the building and out onto, yes, literally honey running down 5 stories, a little river of honey. So that got us looking, and then we identified another one over in A building. It turns out the A building one was quite a mamma jamma. 60 pounds of honey and honeycomb. Yes. Yeah. Yep. Yes. We should have bottled it. Yeah, we really should have.
We could have sold it at the boutique.
We could have sold it at the boutique, yes. So we've removed that. We do need to leave that hole open for 3 to 4 days for any remaining activity to get out, for the area to dry out before we can go ahead and do some sealing and then close all that up. The hive over at F building actually was smaller. It was an older one that had been abandoned, and actually that swarm we saw the other day was drone bees trying to reestablish that colony. So maybe A got so hopping that they decided to move over to F. So that was actually old honey running down the side of the building, basically from their work, and I don't know, nibbling or whatnot, but that's what all that was from. I learned bees can chew through building materials. In fact, give them enough time, they'll eat through a 2x4. I did not know that. We had a gentleman out here, he was a beekeeper, a specialist, a very eccentric gentleman, but knew a lot about his craft, took care of those bees. We have a 2-year warranty that those bees won't return, but he said in all likelihood, if they were there once, they will probably come back. So we will have to keep our eye out for any bee activity. Electric car charging stations. I know there's a couple of you with some pretty cool cars that use the solely electric charge. The station by E, we're trying to get that up and running. We did run into an issue, as is the case. We put it in, the company that sold it to us got bought by another company that got bought by another company, and one company doesn't know what they actually bought and what equipment they use to service it. So we have to buy some more equipment to make the stuff that we already bought work. And at the same time, we're trying to look at making sure that the other charger is with the same company, because the last thing you want is one account for this charger and another account for that charger. So that is a headache that Bill Anderson, our construction manager, somehow got stuck with, and I'm going to let him keep it that way. But he's going to let us know. But he is working on that to try and get that up and running. We talked, I think, pretty extensively about phase 1 traffic coding redo. Here is the asterisk. Work to begin in August, work to begin when we have the product. I know many of you are aware of supply chain issues that we're running into with various materials. We have a 4-week lead time. That lead time looks to be growing. So I think we are prepared to pull the trigger as soon as we have the material to be able to do that. So I'm going to say that tentatively, but you know, I'm not 100% sure. Not 100% sure on that. So the scope of the work remains the same in terms of the power washing, the cleaning up of the cobwebs, paint touch up, redo the traffic coding, and then the window washing. So that window washing will be for phase 2 as well. So we will do the whole campus all in one go. But that's unfortunately kind of where we are right now. But I don't want to drop that from your radar or just keep you kind of apprised of where we are. Phase 2, some issues that want to keep you abreast of. Standing water in the breezeways and in the stairwells, that's something we continue to work with Clancy and Thays on. Essentially, there's leveling work that needs to be redone. Once that leveling work is done, we have traffic coding to have to redo. But until that's done, we're still going to be seeing that water pooling. So that is something that we're aware of and holding their feet to the fire on. Items that continue to be on back order: window screens, blinds, cabinet parts, and paint. That one, those lead times are pretty brutal. We've had a couple. We thought we had cabinets resolved, and then of course some of the parts that came in weren't the right parts, so then you get to reorder it, and guess what? You're back to the end of the line, and you're back in queue, and you don't know how long the queue is. So certainly I understand frustrations for folks who have those situations. I just don't have, as soon as I have good information, I will share it. But so many times they say, oh, it'll be here next week. And then next week comes and they're, oh, it'll be here next week. I'm like, right, I can't keep saying that. There's a question about water pressure. So we've been looking at that. What we have in terms of some measurables to share, pressure at the pump. So this is essentially C building, D building, E building. That's the 3 sets of numbers. So 75, 77, 75. That's obviously leaving the pump. So we took measurements at the top of the 5th floor, 66, 65, 66. So we took that information back to the engineer. Engineer agreed that was within specifications. Engineer did say he wants additional measurements because that 66, 65, 66 is done at the where the washing machine hookup is. That's where that reading is done. And he said, well, maybe there's something at the shower head. So now he wants to see what shower head pressure readings look like. He's trying to further identify whether it's a shower fitting issue, whether it is a what, I'm not 100% sure, but they're asking for some more numbers. So we're going to take those additional readings and get that to the engineer and see kind of where we go from there. Ma'am.
Yeah, I question the 5th floor water pressures, and it's not just the shower head that's an issue. The water pressure is an issue at all the faucets in my unit, including the refrigerator, the sinks, all 3 sinks.
Okay. The observation was that in her unit, she's seeing issues with water pressure, sinks, refrigerator, dishwasher, all of that. So I think it sounds like the readings are going to be more for those specific areas. I think what Chris was trying to do was collect information on which units were particularly troublesome and take the readings from there. So I think he had collected some of that information, but if we could connect afterwards so I can make sure you're on the list. list for one of those units that we take some measurements at. Superseding Spectrum for the biggest PIA this week was Convergent Security Systems, the company that provides the equipment and monitoring for our alarm systems for our first floor residents. I'm very sorry for our first floor residents in the new phase. What a colossal mess. They're supposed to be here Monday. They didn't come Monday. They came Tuesday. They came late Tuesday. The technician they sent on Tuesday didn't know what he was doing, said his boss was coming. His boss didn't come till 3:30, didn't even show up today. I'm surprised because I'll be honest, Convergent took care of our phase one very well. They do all of our monitoring for our fire systems. We've not had an issue, and it has been just an absolute train wreck this week. Because of our good relationship with them and past history, I'm trying to work it out with them, but I am looking at alternative solutions. They are the ones who supplied that equipment, so I'm trying to make sure that I'm not gonna, create a huge colossal mess for you all, but it's not acceptable. I apologize. Ooh, that's a mess. Certificate of occupancy, that just goes back to that distributed antenna systems being wrapped up. So hopefully in the next few weeks, maybe months, we should have CO fully wrapped up.
The CO for the buildings and the
whole shoot and match, yep. It'll be all 3 buildings and 1 sub-building. I think that's what this technically, or a build out, something like that, but yep, it'll be for all. Let me see if the big one's coming. Oh, there's the big one. All right, everyone take a breath. Take a breath. Okay. Tentative and bold. I think I had it underlined. Someone must have taken it out. The kitchen, the Highlands kitchen, will be open late August. Now, when I say open, I'm taking 2 things into consideration. One is the contractor is going to turn it over to us. We have to clean it. We have to get the Department of Health to inspect it. We have to get it all fully stocked up. The team members need a little time to cook in it. So I'm saying late August, they're actually cranking out meals from the kitchen. So that is not a venue per se, but I'll tell you, Hernan's making miracles happen working in the kitchen he's working in now. He's going to have a full suite of tools available to him. So I anticipate the offerings that he will be able to crank out will be much more akin to what Highlands Market was doing originally. So then we're looking at Highlands Market with limited seating, September, October, for open. You're walking in there. I'm building some time in there for myself because I want to say it's further out than it actually is. So these are those further out dates. Maybe it's sooner, but here's what I'm going. Limited seating, so that is for our phase 1 residents that remember you walked into Highlands and there was kind of a little cafe area, probably 8 to 10 2-person tables. Essentially, that's what will be open again. And then the whole shoot and match November, December, full service, walking in like nothing even ever happened. That is the goal. That is in conversation with the general contractors, our project managers, the city of Orlando blessing our TCO process, because essentially each stage they're saying, yes, you can have temporary occupancy of the kitchen. Yes, you can have temporary occupancy of the exterior cafe. Yes, you can have the whole thing. So that's all built into this. That's what we're going for. So work has resumed. They have been done with framing, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. Drywall is on hold. There have been a lot of questions about fire rating, sound insulation between the restaurant and other units. So what is required by the building code, what is on the, is a 1-hour fire rating separation between the restaurant and any kind of residential unit. What has been spec'd and what is going to be built is a 2-hour. Okay, we just had our inspection yesterday with the building inspector. He understands it's one is the requirement. He confirmed 1 is the requirement. He understands we're doing 2. We did not pass that inspection. They has a question about the drawing. We need to clarify that. Once he has approved that, then we can actually do the fire insulation and do the drywall layers. We're hoping that's done next week. Drywall work next week. Dean, by the way, I gotta talk to you. We got a question for you. I need your help again, Dean. We're continuing to look for a food and beverage director. Interviews ongoing. Interesting process, but we're continuing to chip away at it and hope to have some announcements for you soon on where we're going with that. Questions about Highlands. So if you think back to our point of sale, universal credit presentation, some of the things I said about tentatively, no, that's not me, how was I? What I said about the universal credit and the way the staged rollout is and how the expirations are going to be, kind of maybe you're seeing where it's starting to align a little bit with the actual plan. I'm hoping that there's ample opportunity for even the folks in the first phase to be able to start using their universal credit in a more traditional Highlands offerings. So that's kind of where I was going with that. Did I ask for questions? Were there questions? Okay. Okay. Well, I like it, right? Okay. There was a question. I've had a few conversations. Concerns about neighbors. So I just kind of wanted to speak a little bit about our process, and this starts to get into a little bit about the continuum of care that you bought into, right? Coming to a life plan community. If you have concerns about a neighbor, you're directed to contact Wendy or Dwayne or Tom or myself, because those 4 individuals are the 4 folks who know this process, understand the importance of confidentiality, understand respecting people's privacy the best. So we ask you to go to those 4 folks with a concern. We keep those reports confidential. If we're talking to a resident, we're not going to say, oh, Susan next door was like, ugh, he's up all night. All the music's so loud. We don't go at it at that angle. We try and keep everything very confidential. We utilize a tool called a Stop and Watch. This is a tool that came out of our nursing center. It was a way for our frontline team members to pick up on small nuanced changes. It's a standardized tool, looks at everything from habits of sleeping, eating, talking, eye contact. It's a little tool we use to help standardize our record keeping. We follow up with the residents, just try to get a sense of what's going on, offer resources, offer help. Sometimes we need to connect with family members. Sometimes we need to talk to other residents. We try and keep everything very confidential, try and respect everyone's privacy. That information is tracked by our level of living team. So that's an interdisciplinary team made up of, if need be, our medical director, Tom, myself, our administrators from the nursing centers, from assisted living, our health resource clinic. And basically what we do in that very confidential meeting is talk about what are the reports that have come in of the residents that we're currently monitoring, what developments have happened within the last week. It's a weekly meeting that we continue to track. Sometimes it's a short-term scope. Someone had this mobility challenge. We've got them hooked up with therapy. They're done with therapy. They're back to normal. We don't need to track them anymore. Some we're noticing cognitive declines over time, and we're tracking and making sure, okay, what are we seeing? What interventions need to be put in place? Who do we need to be talking to? Who are we worried about? So some of these things Wendy has tracked for years and years. Just wanted to give you that kind of information. I can't speak to certain cases. You're more than welcome to come up and report, hey, I have this concern. And I may just say, I'm aware, we're working on it. You may want to know more. I'm really not going to give you a whole lot more than that. Questions about this? Questions in general?
Yes? I was just curious, I'm not criticizing criticizing it all, but I was just curious, why did you go with the 2-hour fire rating instead of the 1? Is that because maybe later on down the line you might need it? Or?
Sound attenuation. So the question was, why go with a 2-hour firewall rating versus a 1 hour? And it's actually not necessarily the rating we were going after, it was the sound attenuation. So the density of the insulation and the number of layers and the density of those layers of the drywall, we went with the 2-hour. Well, we get the 2-hour rating because of our sound attenuation efforts. And we even have planned to do some testing. And we've got one more trick up our sleeve in case that sound attenuation isn't enough. We've got another trick behind us, but we're not putting that in the plans because then you gotta get it permitted and all that stuff. So, yeah.
Well, the Highland Market, I remember we weren't here while it was operational, but we did go in and see it when we had a tour way back when. And it had limited seating. But will they have like a takeout option where you could take it out to the pool or some area once it's a little cooler?
So the question was, will there be a takeout option with the limited Highlands Market? Yes, there will be a takeout option. There might be some makeshift locations that we might have to set up. I'm not sure if we're going to have that patio at that time because of the exit path to get to there. I'm not 100% sure what's in the TCO plan, but I could get some clarification. But we can set up some cafe tables to offer that, especially that time of year. It'll be a little more comfortable outside. Okay, I'm going to go left to right. So, ma'am in the back. Yes, sorry, the beach.
The doors are not locked during the day, I noticed. Actually, they're never locked. The mailroom doors for the
E and F
building and the C building. Should they not be
Ours
locked?
is locked.
the doors should be on the access control, the ones on the ends
They're not.
for C and D.
They're never locked.
So basically, I'm assuming they're locked and just tapping my. Okay, I will take a look at that. They should be active. They're not. They don't latch all the time. Okay, I will take a look at those C and D mailroom doors latching. E and F does not. Okay, so that's a good point. E and F does not have an access control lock. That is going to be added with the phase 1 to phase 2 update. So that's going to be put in. That's a matter of them just running the cable and putting in that lock. And the question was, can the mailman get there? Yes, definitely. Mailman can get in there when they're locked. You'll just need your point of sale fob to open that. So I think that was just missed when they originally did it. So that was brought up last time, and I got confirmation we'll add that. Yeah.
Are the stairwells clean?
Yes, the stairwells are cleaned. I'm looking at Jose because he's going to tell me how often they're cleaned.
Not very often.
Yes, that goes back to the 2 custodians that we have designated. The stairwells are on the custodian's route to do. Those positions became vacant, so we've hired one. The idea is 1 for 3 buildings and the amenity center associated with it. So we feel pretty good about that ratio and the ability of those custodians to maintain the breezeways, the elevators, the surfaces, the amenity spaces, restrooms, as well as stairwells and things like that. So we have a kind of a schedule in mind for what that looks like. And our intent is to share that with you once we have those team members and we've kind of ironed out some of the kinks so that you know what to expect in terms of how often is my breezeway cleaned, how often is the stairwell done, so that you have, because that was a good observation from someone in the past. So we'll share that with you. It's something we've done at Lockberry where we have been able to have a team member there in terms of what we do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, what we do Tuesday, Thursday. So that seems to be working pretty well. So we'll emulate that model here as well. Ma'am, in the white.
I'd like to just give, this is off the subject, I'd like to give kudos to our new bus driver, Sean. He has been in some difficult situations and he has handled himself very professionally.
Kudos for Sean, our new bus driver, who's been in some situations. It's the Westminster way, we test him. Test him in metal. He passed. I'll let him know. Ma'am. Yes.
Do you have any plans to add any things to the kitchen area to make it easier to entertain for a social function we might be putting on?
Are there plans for?
For instance, a microwave.
Oh, here, yes, okay.
Microwave, a coffee machine, warming tray.
Question is, what are we adding here to this pantry to make it a little bit more functional for space, for use, for events? Microwave, coffee machine, and I believe there's a refrigerator spec'd for there as well. So basically kind of a little kitchenette there. No oven, no cooking, because that's not allowed based on our plans. But yes, microwave, coffee maker. Coffee maker, at the very least, a Keurig. I'm looking at some fancier options. Yes. Oh, are you thinking like a bun multi-pot? We'll look at that. Yeah. I'm open to talking. Whatever that space needs to be functional for you, I'm happy to take a look at. And that's mostly minor equipment for my budget.
Yeah, a question. You were going over COVID-19 possible restrictions. I didn't hear anything about Westminster Ballroom Park. Is that?
So the organizations, so the question was, in regards to COVID-19, he did not hear anything about restrictions for Baldwin Park. The organization's stance right now is we're really looking towards our resident councils at each campus to kind of drive what is going to happen in terms of restrictions for independent living. There are communities throughout our system that are very, very aggressive about the restrictions that they want to see in place. Some so far as they didn't open up their dining room at all until a couple weeks ago. Our dining room has been open for many, many months. The organization is really looking for the residents to voice what they are or are not comfortable with. At the last meeting on Tuesday, the resident council did not opt to make any changes to the current independent living levels of restrictions. I would say that if you have concerns, this is a great opportunity to get to know your building rep so that they can float that up through the resident council, and that they will liaise with management, and we will go from there in terms of independent living restrictions. So no changes right now. If things really go south, I wouldn't be surprised if we supersede the whole thing and do put some restrictions in, but I think, as with all kind of management, government policy now, it's what can we do realistically with so many people vaccinated? Because I will say, Baldwin Park and Winter Park residents, out of the almost 900 residents we care for, 15 are not vaccinated. Okay. So the residents aren't necessarily, 15 are not. The residents aren't our risk. Our team members are our risk right now. So that's why we're trying to, I will come right to you. That's why we're trying not to be draconian about the restrictions that we put in place, because you've done what you needed to do. Yes, ma'am.
Is there anything proactive for getting those 15 people vaccinated?
There's a couple things where it's just, there are some medical conditions, some allergic concerns that physicians have said, no.
But I just mean reaching out to them and saying.
Yes, I will say that is something we do through Wendy and Dwayne. They know those folks, and I've had conversations, and we continue to check in and see if the temperature has changed, if that's the case, and offer it as much as we can.
Sort of in the area of landscaping and what have you, is the idea of a fountain for our pond, is that totally off the table now?
Question is an idea a fountain for our pond off the table? No. I will say that the sidewalk out is property of the CDD, Commercial Development District? Yes, okay, thank you. We do have connections to that. We have a resident on the board. We have a Tom on the joint committee with the CDD and the Baldwin Park HOA. That's a conversation that we're having with them. It's all comes down to who's going to pay for the initial, who's going to pay for the ongoing maintenance. We are having conversations with them about the sidewalk, because we have some work we have to do around the sidewalk there. That is on our radar. That is something we're looking at. Fingers crossed. But I think that's a more slower process to proceed. Yes.
It's not off the table.
It is not off the table, no. Okay. Yes.
Do you drain the pond when it gets really coming up?
I don't believe the pond gets drained. I mean, it's essentially a retention pond. So basically, any water that hits this campus goes into that pond. I don't know that there's draining of it. I can imagine it getting low, but I don't imagine anyone draining it.
There's
Well, the other
wildlife.
night was a rain that was pretty full.
Yes, that means it's working. That means it's working. If you see sediment in it, then we've got a concern, because that means there's earth washing into our drainage system, which happened one time when we had the water main break back when the construction trailer poked a hole through it. But yes, ma'am.
Is it actually, not a fountain, but to aerate the water?
Yeah, so the question is it actually a fountain? So the really what it is it's an aeration device. Some of them shoot a jet into the air and look fancy, some just bubble and percolate. I'm not gonna pretend to know what the difference is or how that happens, but there are two different versions, but the goal is to aerate the water and help keep the algae, the oxygen content appropriate. I know the musicians are ready to go. Anything else?
Why don't you just take individual questions and we'll just...
Yeah, I'll stand up here. If you have individual questions, feel free. Thank you for your time. An hour on the dot.